You're listening to
Antony Scandale.
Ignite your inner power and watch your world change.
And good afternoon. This is Antony S Scandale on this beautiful summer hot day in Victoria, BC. You know, I could be doing something else today. You know, I could actually be out playing golf or go out with some other people. But today, in fact, I would rather be doing this, doing a podcast, because it's something I love to do. And also, Kevin Thornton, who's going to be on in a moment, we've been trying for almost a year to do a podcast. But of course, you know, when you live on the opposite side of the continent, and with his busy schedule and my busy schedule, it's kind of hard to connect. But we finally did. And if you want to know more about Kevin, so just listen up here if you wouldn't mind. Kevin Thornton is a holistic health coach. He's a life coach. He's a radio host, author, speaker, and he's also a blogger for the Huffington Post. But we're going to talk about the book that he contributed to, which is called 20 Beautiful Men, and I can't wait to introduce you to him. So, without further ado, here's Kevin Thornton. And hello, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you, and thank you again for joining me today. I know it's been a long time. We've been trying for a long time to connect, and first of all, thank you very much for reaching out to me a while back, and I'm just grateful that we're able to do this today. So, we're going to talk to Kevin Thornton. With the book that he was a contributing author to called 20 Beautiful Men, which actually is a second version, because the first version that came out is called 20 Beautiful Women. So take me through the process of who was behind the whole thing and how you became a contributing author.
Sure. Well, like you said, 20 Beautiful Women was the first version, and it became a bestseller through Amazon, and it became a thing where they became featured authors on the Huffington Post and all that. So it was like a cult following. So she felt so the author, the brainchild behind this was Saba Telkel, Tekle, and this was her brainchild. And it was like she wanted to get 20 females to come together to tell their journey of how they became who they are. Right. And so with that great success, she felt that it was needed to have a book for 20 beautiful men and do the same thing. So a lot of us are personal trainers, life coaches, speakers, authors, and she wanted us to tell our story of how we became who we are and what we do. And it was like a form of inspiration and empowerment. And each person had a different story to tell, and it could fit all different men. So she felt it was needed. We felt it was needed because men, we're not the most emotional creatures. And so it's good to have a book that you can read and you can resonate with, because it might have been part of your journey. And you can see how we went through it. It helped inspire you or motivate you to do the same thing.
You know, I love this idea. Like in the same sort of sense, I was a part of a couple other books, and you're absolutely right. I love her vision because it doesn't happen enough. Like, I mean, if you're a child and the only people who are sort of influential are just your parents, it's not enough anymore, right?
Right.
You know, I mean, sure, you know, mom and dad may have been going through their struggles and they helped you out to get to where you are, that sort of thing. But you need other people. You need different perspectives. You need different stories to help you elevate to the next level. And this is exactly it. Like this is one thing I like to do with kids, is that I want them not only just to look up to your parents, but look at other people that may help and inspire you. And, you know, look into like a baseball player or a hockey player or a soccer player or whatever, and see where they've been and look at their stories.
Right.
With you, like, what's your story when you became a contributing author to 20 Beautiful Men. And so just take us through that.
Um, sure. You know what? If we have a part, we're thinking about doing a part two. So I told her I want to do part two as well because, as I was writing for the initial book, I had a situation go on that has set me back a little bit. So that story would be part of part two. But the initial story is pretty much I went to college. I went to Eastern Michigan University, got a degree in health administration, and I worked in corporate for 15 years. And during that time, corporate America was just making me it's very stressful, and I
Hmm.
started getting anxiety, and I started realizing it was more to who I was than working in corporate America.
Right.
And so what happened was I ended up getting a job in Atlanta, and the stress of the job really made me gain a lot of weight. So I had ballooned up to like 270 pounds. I was having back problems, all this kind of stuff. And so I started exercising. And one particular day, I was doing a boot camp class, and I was sitting in my car waiting for everybody to start the boot camp. And I listened to this radio show by this radio host by the name of Michael Baisden. And he has a syndicated radio show. And at that time, on Wednesdays, he would have Iyanla Van Zant on his show. And so she was on the show, and she said that she was led by the Spirit to do a 9-week coaching session for 100 men. And I was one of the 100 men. And so during that 9-week session is when I realized that part of who I was to become a life coach, and that my life purpose was to inspire, educate, and empower people to be the best version of themselves. So I got me a master's degree in psychology, and I went and got certified as a life coach from there. But I was still doing corporate America until I got laid off.
Ah,
And I felt like God was forcing my hand to do what he wanted me to do because I was getting too comfortable in corporate America because I was getting that check every 2 weeks. And he felt like if I don't step out on faith and do what he is calling me to do, then I'll never get it done. So I got laid off, and I started focusing on the coaching program. And then during that same time, I became a fitness instructor, and I started teaching spin classes.
right.
And during that time, I end up, I, I'm now mind you, I'm still a big guy while I'm teaching these spin classes, and so I end up dropping 55 pounds while
Wow.
teaching. While teaching, so I dropped down to like 210 pounds,
Yeah.
and I inspired my class, and from there I became a holistic health coach. So then from there, I just became my whole vision of it was to inspire, educate, and empower people to be the healthiest version of themselves, mind, body, and spirit. And then that's how the wellness architect became an effect because one of my clients said, I'm gonna call you the wellness architect because you are the creator and the designer of a healthy body, mind, body, and spirit. And so I love that name,
Yeah.
and that's how I became who I am.
That's amazing. And I love your story. Uh,
Thank
it's too often, like here in Victoria, BC, it's pretty much a government sort of based hub. So it's essentially like a lot of people that I know work, corporate, or they're doing government kind of work, and I know for a lot of them, like if they were to lose their job or just to upright leave, it would freak the hell out of them. So
Right.
just go through that process quickly, if you wouldn't mind, when
hmm
because I knew, like already you knew that getting that check every second week and you're not
hmm
happy, before you actually got laid off. Did you ever say that to yourself? I need to do something different.
Yeah. I had started researching. I started connecting with people who was giving me ideas of what I could do and how I could start, building my practice of being a life coach and trying to figure out what my niche was going to be and all that kind of stuff. So I was putting stuff into motion, and I was, connecting with the right people. But um, I think one day what happened was I had to go out of town to Boston for work, and the stress of the job had me. I had an anxiety attack,
Oh,
and after having that anxiety attack, it was from the stress of the job because I I had met with my supervisor, and they gave, and I was traveling 50% of the time. I was working 6 days, had my laptop on the weekend, and I only got like 2% raise.
right.
And 2% raise, and they wanted more from me. They said that I still wasn't giving them enough.
Wow.
And so the stress of that, after having that meeting and the stress of that, just gave me, I had an anxiety attack. And I never had anxiety before.
Hmm.
And so once I had that anxiety attack, I was like, this gotta stop because, my health is more important than this. And so that's when I really started saying, okay, I gotta start trying to make a exit plan and to do something different because if I continue going this route, I might end up getting sick.
Right. And then, of course, what happened was the eventual layoff. So,
Exactly.
so when that happened, um,
Hmm.
was there like a little bit of joy in that? Were
It
you?
was,
Yeah.
for some people, it would be like sad, like, I don't have a job. I was relieved.
Hmm.
I was purely relieved. And then what I realized too is that, a lot of times we define ourselves by our job titles and the amount of money that we make. And what I learned during this whole process that my joy doesn't come from that is doing what I love to do.
Yes.
And so even though I made a lot of money in corporate America and I'm working towards making that same kind of money on my own,
Yeah.
I'm a happier person now than I was in corporate America.
And this is amazing. And in fact, let's just rewind it a little bit because you said the job title because the job title gave you the money kind of thing. Folks,
Hmm.
believe us when we say this. It's just a title. Whatever you've got
Just a
going
time.
on right now is just a title. And in fact, a title can change at any point. What Kevin is trying to say here is that you just because there's the dollars at the end of the title, you got to look at what really makes you happy and
Right.
to figure out what's going to make that heart beat even harder, right?
Exactly. And then also the fact that, if you define yourself strictly by the amount of money you make, your job title, the kind of car you drive, you know, your social economic status, all those things can be taken away from you.
Yeah.
So if they get taken away from you, then who are you? And are you no longer going to be happy?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to learn to love who you are for who you are and not for what you do, because those are two different things. And so I learned to love myself for who I am and know that being a life coach and health coach is what I do.
Hmm.
And I use that as a vessel to just make other people greater people.
I love it. This is totally up my alley, and this is why we're speaking together and why we've met together.
Is it?
Um,
I agree.
the one of the hardest things for people to do, is to love themselves first.
Hmm.
And and I hear this all the time. People are like, you know what, you got to learn to love more. Try to love your
Hmm.
neighbor. And for a
Hmm.
lot of people, unfortunately, that's a massive leap. To
Hmm.
go from like some sort of like bitter hatred to leap towards love. That's like a freaking canyon away from, between the two destinations. So instead, bridge that gap of respect. So, and what I'm trying to say is, because Kevin is doing a good job, folks, with what he's doing, he had to
Hmm.
respect himself first and then
Hmm.
learn to love. If he couldn't do that, he wouldn't be able to help anyone else. Would you agree?
Absolutely. You are so right. I had to learn to love myself enough to do what I need to do to take care of myself.
And that's exactly what I think a lot of people are missing at the moment because, um, like we were saying, like your title can change, but there
Hmm.
is something with everyone. We all have a purpose. Um, what would you say your purpose is exactly? Like, I mean, because I'm sure you have a why that's attached to your purpose.
Yeah. I feel, I'm a natural leader, and so and I'm very, I'm like a empath. So I'm big on inspiration. So
Hmm.
I think the reason why I'm a life coach is because like my whole purpose is to educate people to be the best self, and you know figure out who they are, and to be able to learn to love themselves for who they are, and have others be able to love them for who they are and not what they want them to be.
Yes.
And so that's my I think that's my whole why, is to because I'm very spiritually connected to people, and so then therefore I learned how to meet people where they're at to help them get to where they want to be.
Right.
So
And it's exactly it. Like it, and it, for some people feel that they, what you had to go through, like there's a
mhm.
big long process, and I think unfortunately people forget that there is that process. So with
Mhm.
you had to like say no, that's enough. Let's try something else.
Right.
And then sort of put in that motion of like, okay, what would be my escape plan? And then boom, something happens.
I'm gonna give you a story that I think your listeners would really like,
Yeah.
and this will be the exclusive. I have never told nobody else the story yet because I've been trying to do it on a video, but I think I'll share it with you first.
Thank you.
As I was preparing to write the book, my portion of the book, I got bit by a poisonous spider,
Okay.
on my leg and on my ankle and my leg. So it put me in the hospital for a month. And it was when I went to the ER, they were saying that I had to do emergency surgery and with possible amputation of my leg. So
Wow.
I go to the hospital, but they got everything in enough time. But I didn't have to do amputation, but I had to be in the hospital for a month. Um, During that time frame, you know, they had my phone and security, so I had no cell phone or anything like that. So I had no way to call anybody. I don't know nobody's numbers by heart but my parents,
Right.
and they live in another state. So I had no phone calls. I had no visitors for a month. And the nurse come in and she said, "Mr. Thornton, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." She said, "You are always so polite, always so positive when I see you. Any other person who is going through what you're going through will be crying, mean and everything, but you so positive. Can I ask you what you do?" And I said, "I'm a life coach." And she said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." So I said, "So how I see the situation is that everything happens for a reason, for one."
Hmm.
I said, two, I was having an inner battle with God at that time because God wanted me to slow down
Right.
on the amount of classes I was teaching in spin classes because it was other opportunities that he wanted to present to me, but he couldn't give it to me because I was too busy doing all these different classes. So since I refused to slow down on my own, he forced me to slow down.
Right.
So I said, so, and the fact that nobody could call me and nobody could visit me is because he wanted me to rest for one, and then two, to be by myself so I could connect with him to figure out what's my next move.
Right.
And she was like, I would have never thought about it like that. I said, well, you know, I never asked why me. I always ask what I'm supposed to learn from the situation and then learn from that situation and move forward.
Right.
And so when I got released from the hospital, the first email I saw was from Saba saying, make these corrections. I made these corrections, and that's what I started focusing on was the book. And then from there, other opportunities came along,
Right.
but it would never came along if I never had that situation. So people say I'm crazy when I say I'm grateful for that situation, but I am grateful for that situation.
First of all, thank you for sharing that story with me. And I know like you said, you haven't told really anyone. So I really
Right.
feel, grateful for you to tell me that story. Um, and I hope anyone listening out there, yes, stuff like that can happen to you. The underlying message with Kevin at the moment is basically saying that you have to find the gold in every situation. And
Absolutely.
Ed Foreman said this. If you don't know who he is, check him out on YouTube. He's an incredible speaker. But for every situation that happens, no matter if it's good or bad, there is an underlying message. And you have to be grateful for it, because that's when you say, you know what? Who cares? Because life doesn't give a crap. Life isn't going to say, you know what? I'm just going to favor these people or that people. No, it doesn't do that. We're all susceptible to some sort of nasty situation or what have you. But you have to own it and just say, listen, it's okay. I'm still alive. I'm breathing. I have my limbs, and I can still think, which a lot of people don't do, unfortunately.
Right.
But you needed that time and space to heal and to get back on track.
Right.
So
exactly.
And if anyone who has probably been in a similar situation as Kevin or myself, you get it and understand it. But for anyone who, if it's going to come to you, just accept it for what it is. It's okay, because so this too shall pass, right?
Right. Exactly.
No, but I'm grateful you told me that story, because life is way too precious.
I agree. And then what I learned too is that in that part of the journey is everything in life is purposeful. Relationships is purposeful. Your job is purposeful. So sometimes the purpose, like in your situation and my situation, the purpose of our jobs had ended. It had pretty much ended a long time ago. But we were trying to hold on to those jobs for whatever reason, whether it was convenience or comfort or whatever situation may be. So since we didn't leave when we supposed to have left, the universe made it tougher for us.
Right.
To the point to where we say, okay, now I have to leave because it's no longer comfortable for us.
Exactly.
So, exactly.
That's perfect. It's even funny you say that, because something similar like that came to me, where I was chatting with who was basically my mentor at the time, who was helping me through my my past, and he basically said, you know what, if you don't make a decision, the universe is going to make one for you, and it's going to be difficult what you get put into. That was like that was when my mind started to really expand and say, yeah, man, like, if you're on the fence, you want to pick the side and just go with it. So,
right, exactly. That's so true.
I'm speaking with Kevin Thornton here. We're having a great conversation about life and about his book called 20 Beautiful Men. Is there anything else coming up for you in terms of writing books, or do you have any seminars coming up that maybe people in your area, or even are you going to come over to this side of my world in Canada to do a speaking event of some sort?
I would love to come to your side of the world. I'm trying to figure out how I could do that, because I really want to expand out into Canada, because I really love Canada. I used to live in Detroit,
right?
So I used to always go to Windsor and Toronto a lot.
Yeah.
And so I really like the whole atmosphere of Canada. So that's like one of my next moves. So maybe we need to try to collaborate and try to make that happen some kind of way.
Yeah.
But I just got finished doing a Soul Summit with everyone from the 20 Beautiful Men and Women collaboration. So we all came down to Atlanta for a 3-day event and seminar to network and collaborate and talk about, what we have experienced since the book has been released.
Right.
So I'm getting ready to do some book tours. So I'm getting ready to go to Cleveland to do a book tour, and also going to Pensacola, Florida to do a book tour. And then also I'm going to Detroit. And those are my next 3 cities I'm going to do a book tour.
Awesome. And while you're there, don't forget to visit Windsor. So
I definitely will. And also, I do have an internet radio show on the
Yes.
internet called the Wellness Architect Show. It's every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. You can hear it on the Status Network. So it's www.statusnetwork.net. And the name of my show is Wellness Architect Show, and the whole intention is to inspire, educate, and empower people, mind, body, and spirit, and financial. So at any given time, I might talk about financial wellness, nutrition, spiritual wellness, relationships, and stuff
Hmm.
like that. So, yeah.
I can't wait. What? I'm gonna start tuning into you more often because what you have is great, man. Like I really wish you all the best in the future. But you know what? I want to do this again with you sometime. So,
Not a problem.
and
I look forward to it.
yeah, we have to because hey, once you make that connection, folks, you stick with that connection. You learn from each other, and you grow and
I
share.
agree.
Right?
And you know what I tell people all the time? I tell my listeners that everything is energy and everything is a frequency.
Yes.
So you attract who you are. So there's no coincidence that we connected because we both are on the same energy and frequency level.
Yes.
And so it's just a matter of time that I came to you or you came to me. And so what I try to tell my listeners too is that once you elevate your spiritual self and your frequency, you don't want to lower your frequency to please other people. If they
Right.
want to be with you, then they need to elevate themselves to where you're at. You don't
Exactly.
never lower yourself to where they're at to be liked by somebody else.
Exactly. And it's interesting because when you reach a certain level of consciousness, when you're a little bit higher, and again, this is not to degrade or make fun of people, but when you start to expand and to accept for who you are and that your frequency changes,
Hmm.
um, you'll don't be surprised when people just don't connect with you anymore. You know,
I agree.
you know what I mean? Like if it's
Hmm.
just it's an interesting situation. It's happened to me many times when I really started to work on myself. A
Hmm.
lot of the people I used to hang out with or I was in contact with, they started to just slip away almost
Hmm.
overnight, right?
Right.
And some will just be so blatant and say, "What the hell is wrong with you, man? Why
Hmm.
have you changed?" And if they say stuff like that, it's because they're
Right.
afraid of the changes. That also means that they have to make their own changes and they don't want to face it.
Right.
So yeah, keep expanding, folks, because once you get to a certain level of consciousness, you will never want to go down that rabbit hole again.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think a lot of times people don't expand or don't try to elevate themselves in fear of that thing you just said of losing the friends.
Yeah,
But I just feel that as you elevate yourself, you're going to attract more people to you that's more aligned with who you are and where you're going. And
right.
that's more important than anything else.
Exactly. Exactly. Kevin, I want to thank you again for joining me today. Again, this is Kevin Thornton with me on my podcast. So let's just go back and talk about where we can find you. And
Sure.
yeah, and then definitely we're going to meet up again. So go ahead.
You can find me on Facebook at Kevin Thornton, Thornton, and also on Facebook at The Wellness Architect. So you can like me on that, or also friend me, and I would gladly friend you back. On Instagram, I'm at The Wellness Architect as well. If you want to email me, it's Kevin Thornton, Kevin T211 at hotmail.com. If you, I do detox programs, coaching, so anything like that, if you're interested in, you just hit me at that place or on social media, and I'm glad to get back with you.
Awesome. And on that note of the detox program, when you said that, my mind blew up. I'm like, we should talk about next time because it's amazing what's in our foods at the moment and
Absolutely.
what's still inside our bodies that we need to cleanse. So let's, perhaps next time when we chat, we'll
Hmm.
talk about that subject. So I think that's important. If you can get your mind and your body healthy, your mind will change as well. So great to have you on,
Absolutely.
Kevin. Thank you very, very much for being on the show here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and enjoy your family reunion, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And everyone out there, remember, ignite your inner power and watch your world change. And we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
You're listening to
Antony Scandale.
Ignite your inner power and watch your world change.